So make sure that you know that they're evaluating how you approach problems, how you make decisions, how you communicate, how you handle trade-offs, and say your thought processes out loud or annotate your work. It is not necessarily like they are looking for one right answer. It's more so that you just need a practical, well-reasoned one. Hello, welcome back to Answer the Call, where we help Christians discern what they feel called to do and practically land a job that's aligned with it. We are in week 4 of our series on how to not get rejected. In week 1, we talked about how to ace your application and not get rejected there. In the second week, we talked about how to ace your phone screening with the recruiter, also just known as like what's typically the first interview. And then last week, we talked about how to ace your hiring manager interview, which is typically the second interview with the person that would be your boss. And now it is week 4, and we have to talk about how wildly the interview process varies from here based on industry, level of seniority of the role you're going for, type of company. And so we want to prepare you for those options to share what might happen given your unique scenario and how to prepare for each of those types of interviews. This is quite a comprehensive workshop style training that we've put together. And so in order to make this I guess, most digestible for you, we are going to talk through everything, but we have a companion guide linked in the description where we'll have this written as a blog post on our website so that you could see kind of the bullet points that we're talking through. And you could say, oh, okay, they invited me to a case study interview. How do I prepare for that? Let me scroll to what they said. We'll also try to have chapters on the YouTube version as well as the podcast version of this episode you're listening to now. With that, a preview of what you're going to hear from us today is an overview of the possible interview types that companies will use, from peer to technical to executive interviews and more. What is common based on company size and role type that you're going for, and how to prepare for each type of interview in a step-by-step manner. Like it is pretty, we're giving like up to 8 steps on each type of interview and how to prepare for them, depending on what the company tells you they are going to do. You're rest assured, most likely not going to go in blind. So this can be an episode that you could come back to as the recruiter says, okay, the next interview is going to be a panel style or an all-day back-to-back with peers or cross-functional collaborators. You can come back to the chapter that's applicable to you. I think it's time to dive right in. Audrey, do you want to talk about a quick overview of possible interview types?
Yes. So what we've seen so far in the interview process, you already laid it out a little bit in the intro, but again, first is that phone screening, typically with the recruiter, and then the hiring manager interview. And then from there, you might see a team or peer interviews that include 1, 2, or 3 conversations that can either be a panel or be back-to-back. I've seen a lot of people just be shifted in Zoom rooms. So these may include future teammates, cross-functional partners, senior leaders, people like that in the department. From there is the role-specific assessment that comes next that varies, right? So what can you expect? Maybe it could be a case study interview, which we typically see in consulting, product, or strategy. And that's basically when they have the candidate analyze a business problem and explain their reasoning and their solution approach. Next type of interview that could happen here is a technical assessment. So that's more engineering, technical, data, IT. And that's when you're evaluating the job-specific technical skills through coding, analysis, problem solving, whatever is relevant to your particular industry. The third, which I'd go as far to say this is the most common we see.
Yeah, I'd say.
The presentation. So that can come in a lot of places, but some industries I'll call out specifically be marketing, ops, any kind of management. And that's when you're presenting a topic or a solution to basically demonstrate your communication skills, your structure, and also your strategic thinking. And
yeah, we've also seen that for enterprise sales and account management.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of presentations in the past I'll say year, but before that
Yeah.
too. Just in the past year, a lot of presentations. Two other forms that you could expect to see is one being a writing assignment. So it's going to be more in communications or policy or PR that's measuring your written communication. Are you able to share clearly, communicate clearly, and can you synthesize information for a specific audience? And the last is a portfolio review. We see this a lot more in the design space. So you're walking through your past work to demonstrate skills, process, design thinking. You may have already shared your portfolio with them, but this is a more in-depth review of that. And the final interview after all of this, typically what we see is that executive interview with your boss's boss, one level above the hiring manager, some senior level. And that's what you can expect. I know I said I was going to do that quickly, but that was a lot of information.
Yeah, there's a lot of different types, and realistically, companies will literally plug and play and switch that around or delete steps or add crazy steps. And so here are variations based on, like, you kind of just heard like the general template from Audrey. Here are common variations based on company type as well as role level. So if you're applying to work for a very small business, well, this could even be 100 employees or less, there is a tendency for it to be more like 2 to 3 interviews total. And so it might just look like recruiter screen, hiring manager, and then someone on the team, or possibly, depending on how senior the role is, like your boss's boss, like the owner or executive, depending on how small it is and how senior the role is. So generally, they'll kind of just do 2 to 3 interviews. 4 would be kind of a stretch. Unless, I don't know, I've seen some nonprofits be very proud of their time and be like, 8 interviews and they're all character based and you need to write what you think about, like your statement of faith. It's like, good Lord. So yeah, variations apply. But aside from small businesses, startups can be similar, but I would put them in a slightly different category. And this is where it could be fast and intense, particularly if their hiring needs, like they're very sure that they need a certain person now. They might be focused on a very specific skill set that they know they need immediately. And so these can be fast and intense. I've also seen startups, I just want to say, I have seen them go incredibly slow, like 3 months or longer, because they posted the role and then they were actually not sure that they really wanted to hire for that. And then they changed the requirements. So exceptions apply, but they can be fast and intense, and they can focus heavily on culture fit. I would say that is a very dependable factor of a startup interview. And they may have a presentation or take-home projects. For large corporations, you are almost always going to start with a recruiter phone screen and do the more predictable full set of maybe 4 to 7 interviews with assessments. And this is often the slowest timeline because large corporations trend towards I don't want to say bureaucracy, that can be true, but let's just call it standardized processes and controls. And if you've used our process of how to get a job without necessarily applying through our strategic outreach that we've recommended in other interview episodes, you might be able to skip the recruiter screen and go straight to the hiring manager. But after that, you're still going to do your other interviews from there. Variations by role level. Let's talk about these. Here's what you're going to notice change about interviews the higher up your position is within the organization. Generally, the higher the level, the role, the more people need to approve you, the more cross-functional interviews you'll have, the more strategic the questions, maybe about your leadership style, decision-making, judgment, the more assessments you may complete, the longer the total timeline. So if we kind of reverse that and start with junior level or entry level roles, this means that maybe the typical number of interviews, if it's very junior, it might be 1 or 2, sometimes 3. If it's maybe just like one step above entry, maybe it's 3. Timeline is a little bit faster because there's just a lot less depending on this role. Maybe it's 1 to 2 weeks. I think that would be pretty fast. Like, let's say 1 to 4 weeks. And the assessment, you might have it, but you also might not. Like, this is where, you might not have to do a take-home project because they're not really expecting you to have all the skills in the world. What the process looks like is a recruiter screening, a hiring manager interview, and then an optional like team panel or quick skills test. What they're assessing is trainability, reliability, coachability, basic skills, work ethic, and attitude. And the bottom line is these interviews are shorter and simpler. But when we move to mid-level roles, more like 3 to 10 years of experience, the typical number of interviews goes from 3 to 5. Timeline might be 2 to 4 weeks or even up to 3 months. Like, I would say 1 to 3 months is at times can be common. 3 months is a little extreme. Let's say like 6 weeks is 4 to 6 weeks might be on the higher end, but I'm just saying I've seen it. And then assessments can be common, but are shorter. And what the process looks like is phone screen, hiring manager interview, team interviews with like maybe 1 to 3 people. Like Audrey said, this can be all at once in a panel or back-to-back on Zoom or in an in-person interview day. A skills assessment, maybe 1 to 2 hours max. Final interview with the director or senior leader. And what they're assessing is, can you work independently and own your function? See how different that is than entry? And can you collaborate effectively? Those are 2 opposite but important skills that you need to have as an option in your tool belt. And do you have the hard skills and depth that they need? Because they'll really be relying on you and you'll have some real responsibility as a mid-level leader. And can you solve the hiring manager's actual problems? And go back to our last episode to learn about what those are and speak to them effectively. The bottom line here is that for mid-level roles, this is the classic multi-step process that most people experience. But if you're further on in your career and you're going for senior roles, this is the last variation. I'll talk about senior level roles and then how also executive level roles differ in the interview process. And then we'll get into like, okay, how to prepare for each style of interview. So senior level roles, I'm talking like manager, senior manager, lead, principal, partner. No, that's actually getting like executive for some companies. Let's say senior manager, lead, director. Typical number of interviews. Again, if it's a startup, maybe it's going to be like 4, but typically it might be 5 to 7. And timeline, let's call it 3 to 6 weeks. Assessments can include presentations, case studies, or strategic exercises. What the process looks like, as you might be catching a pattern, sure, it's going to start with recruiter screen, hiring manager deep dive, peer to senior level interviews, but then more cross-functional partner interviews. Because when you're getting up there, you're not just focused on your own department, you're going to be talking to the other departments, whether that be finance, sales, engineering, operations, or beyond. Leadership and cultural interviews, strategic assessment or presentation, and the executive sign-off interview, where they're like, really, do I trust this person's character and thinking? Do they think about their expertise in their domain with the level of, I guess, competence that I would expect given this company and our needs? And what they're assessing is your leadership approach. And I'm talking about assessing throughout all those interview styles, not just the final executive sign-off interview. Throughout all of these, maybe 5 to 7 interviews, they're assessing your leadership approach, your decision-making strategy, communication style, ability to influence, occasionally without authority. Even though this is a senior level role, you do have some authority, but you also might need to flag things for other departments or people higher than you. So when you're not the ultimate authority, how do you still influence to help with respect for your actual authority in the role, which might be limited? Also, how you shape the culture there. Do you meld with it and do you further it? Bottom line, at this level, risk is higher for the company, of course. So more people have to agree that you're the right person. And I'll finish with executive roles before we move on to the next section, where we'll talk about how to prepare for each interview style. Executive roles. First off, if you're an executive listening to this podcast, hi, I'm honored.
Hey.
We have worked with C-suite level clients before, so it does happen. Executive roles, again, depending on the organization, I think director can be quite a variable title. Sometimes they'll slap that on like a near college student because it's like a 3-person organization and we have our director of marketing. And for larger, more established orgs, director really means something big. You have worked for absolutely years to get that title. But in the traditional sense, I'm talking about executive roles that are director, VP, C-suite. Particularly C-suite is like the obvious definition here. Typical number of interviews, it might be 6 to 12 dog. And that is because it takes a long time. It's going to be like 1 to 3 months, particularly if you're C-suite. Oh my goodness. Likely they've hired an executive search firm that has specialty in appointing very, very key leadership. And they're not usually in a rush. They might even have appointed an interim C-suite person, CEO, CFO, whatever, because they want to have they need the ability to take time to find the right permanent person. And for this, assessments might include large presentations, strategy decks, 90-day plans, or full business reviews. I would definitely expect that a full business review can happen. What the process looks like is, oh my goodness, I'll just rattle off how many things could happen. You could have an executive recruiter or an external search firm screening, a hiring executive interview, a panel with peers and cross-functional leaders. And that's kind of standard. That's maps onto what you've seen in the other interview processes. But from there, it branches into C-suite or board interviews, stakeholder interviews, if that's applicable, with key, like maybe majority investors, founders, key department heads, case study or strategy presentations, often 30 to 90 minutes with a Q&A, almost acting like a board presentation. I know Kevin has had to do that, and I'm so proud of him. My muse. Sorry, I have to mention Kevin in like every single interview, apparently, or episode. Then, of course, excuse. Well, sorry. I think that's God telling me to shut up about my husband. But of course, after this, you might expect some cultural fit and leadership philosophy interviews, reference checks, which of course, like these are almost always required the higher up your position is. But I think plenty of companies do it for, probably anything except entry level, maybe even still entry level. They might still do reference checks. So not uncommon. And then a final calibration conversation like, hey, are we serious about this? Are you ready to make the move? Like, are we signing, basically getting business married? Because it is such a big deal to hire an executive. And what they're assessing is your vision, strategic clarity, long-term leadership ability, fit with the founder, board, and culture, ability to drive revenue, manage risk, and lead large teams. The bottom line is executives go through the longest and most political processes. I think we're ready. Audrey, do you want to talk about how to prepare for each type of interview now that hopefully the listener has kind of placed themselves and what type of interview sequence they might be going into based on their desired role level and company type?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So preparing for each type of interview, it also, the size of the company plays a part in here, and that should all give you a better idea, like Kelsey just said, based on what we've just talked about, how to prepare after the recruiter screen and the hiring manager. And the recruiter, this actually was going to say this earlier, so I'm glad I have an opportunity to say it now. The recruiter's going to tell you what's coming next. And if they don't, ask them. And now that you have this context of what could be coming next too, hopefully that gives you more confidence in your question. Saying, oh, is it a case study or is it a presentation? Great question to ask. And also a bonus tip here, reach out to peer level people at the company who just got hired. You can see that on LinkedIn, and ask what tips they have or maybe what to expect. People are so willing to share that information. I have
Yes,
found.
especially when they have that gratitude glow of the first like month or 2 or 3 on the job. They're like, I made it. Who else can I help?
Let me help anybody possible.
Yeah,
They're telling
seriously.
like their kid's second grade teacher how they got the job. I'm sure they'd be willing to
Yeah.
help somebody who's in their LinkedIn DMs.
Yeah.
So, brief review here. That first recruiter screen, 20-30 minutes, they're just confirming basic qualifications, checking compensation alignment, gauging interest and communication style, explaining the role, yada, yada, yada. We've talked that into the ground, but there's a brief review for you, and you'll typically get an answer on that, a yes or a no, within 1 to 5 business days. Usually things happen. The interview process is not perfect.
It can
but
totally be longer than that.
yes, it can absolutely be longer than that. We've seen it. So variations and exceptions apply. That second interview is the hiring manager interview. Again, as we've said in the past, it's deeper evaluation of your experience, behavioral and situation questions. So that's like, give me a time that you did blank, or how would you handle blank. They're doing that. They're also assessing alignment with the role's responsibilities. Are you aligned? Can you demonstrate your alignment? And determining if your background can solve their team's problems. This is often the most important interview of the entire process. Would you say that, Kelsey?
Yeah, I'd say, because everything else is just they're asking other people to confirm what the hiring manager already thinks about you. Like, I have a good feeling, or I think this is our top candidate, or I think this is our second candidate. Do you agree? Or you might say, the hiring manager might say, you know, I thought that this and this was really good about them. I'm concerned about this. Can you press into that? In the next interview, they might be telling that to their boss or the cross-functional or teammates that you would be talking to in the next steps. And then they'll come together to see what they finally think. But the hiring manager, which I feel like I should assert this every once in a while, just the reminder that hiring manager is not a job title. It's a temporary title to refer to the person who would be your boss. So if you go on LinkedIn and search the company that you're interviewing with and look for hiring manager as somebody with that job title, you're not going to find it. We're just referring to who would be your boss. But obviously, I think it's clear why they are the most important in the decision.
Yes. And it's just another reminder, they're talking about you behind the scenes. They are talking about you, and you want them to be talking about you. It's not siloed, right? Like they've already read notes on you. They've had conversations about you as you're going into these interviews that follow. So you should expect that. Going back to our brief review, that was the hiring manager conversation. Third one is team, or those peer interviews. Again, those are going to be future teammates, cross-functional partners that you're working with a lot, or senior leaders, and they're assessing collaboration. How are you going to contribute? Do you fit culture? Do y'all have chemistry? And that technical or functional depth as well. And they're usually panel style or back-to-back. That's our brief review, kids. Now let's go into the actual, how are you preparing? So with the peer review, step 1 is understanding the goal here. I know I just went over that a little bit, but going into a little bit more detail, the team members are wanting to know, are you going to make their job easier, or are you going to make their job harder? Because they're likely, if the role is open, they're likely taking on the work of that open role. And are you going to come in and alleviate that for them, or are you going to just make it harder for
their personality higher?
Yes. Are you humble and collaborative? Another way to say that is, are you likable, truly? And it does not rely solely on your likability, but it relies a lot on your likability.
Well, it's just like, are you a good person?
Yeah.
Are you a good person?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just, we all know those horror stories of working with people who aren't good people.
For real.
Are you good at communication? Do you spell things correctly? Do you send coherent messages? We all have the experience of receiving those emails that just say FYI, and then have nothing else in them. You're supposed to just read the entire email chain and understand exactly what that person wants you to understand. Sorry, I know I'm going into detail on these, but I do feel passionately about them. So let me keep going. Are you a team fit without being a clone? Like, are you authentic, right? Authentic, but also curated to what they need. It's okay to do a little bit of both. I feel like we could actually do a whole podcast episode on that, so let me not go down a rabbit hole. Last one I'll mention here is, can you handle conflict maturely or pressure maturely? And if you can't, you should work on that. Sending love. Sending love. Yeah, there's this is really a chemistry interview more than a skills interview. So do your like pump up in the mirror beforehand. Have your second cup of coffee, but don't be like too crazy. Do whatever you do before going into social situations.
Can I admit that I wrote this outline and I actually would like to take back that this is a chemistry interview more than a skills interview. It's both. It is realistically both. They don't just want like a likable teammate. You had such a fire point earlier about these are the people that while this job is potentially unfilled or filled with the wrong person in it, which is why they're hiring, the whole team is in pain because they're taking over your job. And so your skills and your competence matters always. Personality alone is rarely ever the point. But it is also chemistry. So we could go on to step 2.
It's more chemistry than maybe some of the other interviews are in the process.
Thanks, Queen. Perfect way to say that.
Step 2. Kelsey, this step is so important. I'm going to share my story that I've shared on the podcast before that haunts me to this day. Step 2 is researching each person that you're going to meet. Job title, how long have they been there, their background, where they would overlap. ChatGPT this as well, just like typical org charts if you're not quite sure, just to have an idea. And then you can ask if you're really unsure, like, this is how I understand it. Is that true? What an amazing way to ask a question without just leaving it open-ended. You give them something to work with versus making them do it all for you in there and be like, how do we work together? No. Give them something to work with. Anyways, so this helps you tailor your examples as well and ask more thoughtful questions. The story I want to share here is when I hopped on an interview, it was a senior level, like the last vibe check, if you will. I hate describing interviews that way, so I'm so sorry I just did that. But senior level.
I was watching this YouTube video yesterday where this girl was like, I don't want to say vibe. I don't want to say vibe.
Help me not say vibe, please.
Vibe. I'm related to that so much.
So in this final interview was make or break if I was going to get this job or not. The interviewer, I get on to the interview and the interviewer says, tell me something that you learned about me. And I had looked at his profile, I did, but 2 weeks prior because we kept having to reschedule the interview. So immediately I say, of course, yeah, let me just pull up my notes. And I just pull up his profile and I read the first thing. I had no idea what it meant, but I just read the first thing on it. And he goes, yeah, okay, great. Now tell me something without reading directly from my profile. I'm like,
burn.
Cool. And that's when I owned up to it. I said, I did look at your profile. It was 2 weeks ago and I didn't refresh before this call. And I'm sorry about that.
I'd say, I'm wild guess, you're a sharp shooter. You shoot it straight.
Beautiful. 2 different personalities with great approaches. And I did end up getting that job. And I found out later from somebody who works closely with that director, she said, you probably got the job because he likes someone who just owns up to it and apologizes and moves on. So yeah, I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but researching people, very important. Also, like, know where they went to college or something. That's always an easy thing to remember. Just do that. Step 3, prepare relevant stories, team relevant stories, using STAR, or as we like to redefine it over here, SAR, which is just taking out the T. STAR is sharing your response in a situation, task, action, result format. I give you full permission to do situation, action, result. So when you're choosing those stories, how do you make them team relevant? We want you to focus on stories that show your collaboration, show you having influence without authority or without like over, just controlling everything, but having influence. Conflict resolution, cross-functional teamwork is another one, taking ownership, helping a teammate succeed, and navigating ambiguity, which is huge. Those are all stories that peers will listen for and will respond to. So those are some guidelines that you can pay attention to. Step 4, master these 8 common peer interview questions. At least 70% of team interviews include some variation of this. I'm going to rattle them off. What's your working style? Tell us about a conflict with a coworker and how you handled it. How do you prefer to give and receive feedback? What frustrates you at work? Describe a time you worked cross-functionally. How do you handle competing priorities? What would your current teammates say it's like to work with you? How do you like to communicate? That's very similar to step 3. Step 3 and 4 go hand in hand. So your goal is to sound like someone who's self-aware, confident, and competent, but low ego, adaptable, and easy to partner with. Easy peasy. And in order for even for the person, when you are authentically like that, you need to put work into being able to sound like that. So put in the work, kids. Step 5, prepare a collaboration philosophy, if you will. This is really just a tight 30-second statement. I guess you can think of it like elevator pitch kind of length. That makes you sound polished and well aligned for your collaboration philosophy. An example of that would be, I work best with teams that communicate clearly and operate with transparency. I'm proactive about giving context, asking clarifying questions, and surfacing issues early so nothing becomes a fire drill. My goal is always to make collaboration easy so everyone can do their best work.
Boom, baby. Yeah, and just say whatever's true. Like, what is your collaboration philosophy? How do you work best within a team? What would need to be true about this team and your, like, how they allow you to operate within it in order for you to do a good job? And you will use that statement at some point in these peer interviews. It's just going to be helpful to know, because that's honestly the bottom line. They want to know what kind of professional you are in terms of how you collaborate with the team.
And you want them advocating for you on your behalf. Step 6 in preparing for those peer interviews is doing a team-specific skills review. So peers might ask you questions like, how do you approach X? What would you do if Y happened? Have you used this tool? All related to the tasks in this job, which you can find from the job description or previous interviews. You don't need to demonstrate technical mastery here. Just show that you actually know what the role needs you to know. Yeah. And you're not going to be, again, a burden to your teammates.
Exactly. If step 4 and 5, or really 3 through 5, were about preparing for collaboration team style questions, the step 6 is about preparing to talk about your technical expertise and answer their questions about that. Because skills do matter.
Skills do matter. Step 7 is about preparing questions that make you look like an A player. So what questions are you going to ask them besides, how many days do you work in the office? Oh my gosh. That can't be your only question. Are you allowed to leave for a doctor's appointment? Let's ask really thoughtful questions, because they are a two-way evaluation. These interviews are a two-way evaluation. You want to make sure that you would like working on this team. This is one of the top things I hear from people is, oh, I really like the company, but how do I know if it's going to be a disaster? Because a lot of people come from really hard work situations and don't want to fall into another one. This is how you know this interview. You can find out in a lot of different ways from all the different interviews, but this is a very direct way. So avoid the generic questions and instead ask things like, what does a great teammate look like on this team? That makes my heart so happy. I would love to answer that question for somebody. Can you tell me about the communication rhythms that exist here? How does the team handle disagreements or competing deadlines? I think that competing deadlines is so important, that part of the question. And then finally, what would make someone successful or not in their first 90 days? Beautiful. And then step 8, we made it to the last one. plan to build small but genuine rapport. So you don't need to be like overly charming. Just be yourself in a charming way. But authenticity is here, right? Being genuine, right? What is that genuine rapport? And here are ways that you can build that, because I don't think this is talked about a lot in interview prep. So notice something on their LinkedIn. Where'd you go to college? Where did they transition to from last in their career? Ask them about that. How was that shift? Compliment their insight, compliment them, like their competence, not just their personality, and smile. Use a warm tone, pay attention to your energy, but also mirror their energy, because if you're totally off on energy, it could be a mismatch. But again, you want to keep this genuine. Like if they are actually the most boring people ever to exist, maybe it's not the right fit for you, but also don't come like in guns blazing. Match their energy in a way that's still authentic. You're aiming to be easy to talk to and be nice to be around.
Yeah.
Kelsey, I think anything else you want to say, or should we move into the role specific ones?
Yeah, I'm looking at this outline and our time to next meeting, and I feel like we got to move on to the next one. But you also just said so many good things that needed to be said about that. So now that we've helped you prepare for team, peer, cross collaborator style interviews, now we want to help you apply for or prepare for these role specific assessment interviews. Again, what they would actually be called in your situation is, for example, the case study if you're in consulting, product, or strategy, or a technical assessment if you're in engineering, data, or IT. Presentation is common if you're like marketing, ops management, or writing sample if you're in communications or policy, or portfolio review if you're in design, things like that. So it's just the assessment where they're like, okay, can you actually do the work? Let me see your work in action. How do you apply? Or I keep on saying apply yourself to prepare for this style of interview. I'd say it follows some typical steps, regardless of what they're calling it, like a case study or a portfolio review. The first is clarify the instructions. Ask for the exact guidelines, time limits, tools allowed, and evaluation criteria. They'll likely give it to you, so you don't really have to stress about it. But if you're ever unclear, ask again. It's really helpful to know. Or if they give you the recruiter is passing along basic instructions, you could ask, okay, but do they prefer something more like this or like this in your experience? Ask them follow-ups. Make sure that you are very clear on the instructions and definition of success. And you could confirm basic details like if it's in person, live on Zoom, or submitted asynchronously. Step 2, understand the business problem. You could start ideating in the totally wrong direction if you are not only clear, if you're not clear on the problem or objective that they want you to speak to, but not just like clear, but you could actually kind of ad lib on it. Like you could put it in your own words. That level of understanding is very, very important. Identify what problems they're testing, what business outcome they care about, what skills they want to see from you, and reframe the prompt in your own words to ensure clarity. In step 3, understand and research the company's context. Of course, I just put this as step 3. I think that most anybody would do this, but maybe as step 1. But I feel like the other 2 can, when done first, can really narrow your focus instead of learning so many things, random things about the company's context first, which might muddy your thinking. But in step 3, do research the company's context because it shapes your angle and recommendations in terms of products or services, audience or users, industry news, competitor examples, and tone and style of existing materials that they have out there. I take this to the extent of like using free tools online to like identify their hex codes for their colors and their branding and putting it into my presentation.
100%.
I I actually did that randomly for like a little thing. And the person was absolutely obsessed. It put me as like A player status immediately before I started saying anything, which is helpful. Step 4 is draft a simple logical structure. Every assessment should follow a very clean structure based on what it is. So if it's a case study, think situation, analysis, options, recommendation. And I'm going to list this out again. Go to our blog post linked if you would like to see a visual of this. If it's a technical test, start with requirements, decide your approach, code your solution or create the solution, and then testing edge cases. And presentation, if it's a presentation, start with problem, insights and data, proposal, and then the impact that it could make if they follow your proposal. Then writing assessment, start with purpose, key message, supporting points, and a clear conclusion. For a portfolio review, finally, start with your projects, the role that you had as you completed those projects, process that you took to complete them, the results that you delivered through them, and the lessons learned. Clarity beats complexity every time. Use these literally as an outline, depending on what type of assessment they're going to take you through. In step 5, focus on showing your thinking after you draft your basic assessment or presentation, whatever it is. Go back to, am I just throwing information at them, or am I showing, are they learning something about the way I think and the way I work with each of these PowerPoint slides, pages, points that I'm going to be talking through? So make sure that you know that they're evaluating how you approach problems, how you make decisions, how you communicate, how you handle trade-offs, and say your thought processes out loud or annotate your work. Because in step 6, we want to help you remember to prioritize what matters most. It is not necessarily like they are looking for one right answer. It's more so that you just need a practical, well-reasoned one. When you focus on that, I feel like it takes a little bit of the pressure off and realize, like, I have done case studies before, and I know that I had an answer that at one point made the interviewer laugh. And I still think about that to this day, like, cool, he thought I was so dumb. But I think similar to you, Audrey, in the mistakes that inevitably might be made at several points in your career of interviewing for various opportunities, it's how you handle it and how you demonstrate what kind of professional you are when you flub. You know, and so that, I think it's just a key point to take away from these skills assessments. And if you focus on in providing a well-reasoned one, just focus, I guess, a well-reasoned recommendation. They're just focusing on your logic, your impact, the feasibility of what you suggested. Like, is it outrageous? Like, do you really not know what you're talking about? Tends to happen sometimes, but, you know, try. And then concise communication. In step 7, for these skills assessments, we would advise you to make sure that your proof of work is built on data or evidence, even lightly. So use simple calculations that are straightforward to talk through, research, even if it's lightweight, observable patterns, and examples from your experience. Examples from your experience is really a very helpful thing to aid in your credibility because it shows that you're not just Googling or chat GPTing everything. Step 8, prepare to present your work confidently. So if there's a live discussion, practice a 3 to 5 minute overview, prepare to walk through the slides or the code, anticipate the 5 to 7 likely questions. And you could ask like your friend or your family or other people in the industry what they think the questions are going to be based on your presentation, and prepare for those. And then prepare your rationale for the choices that you made or the trade-offs that you had to face in your solution. They often care more about how you explain the work than the work itself. Step 9, do a final polish. Obviously, just make sure that the grammar, clarity, formatting, visuals are all good. Remove jargon and ensure that the narrative flows logically. That often is most benefited by giving yourself a few hours or a day, if you have it, to walk away and then come back. That always does wonders for me. And then step 10, if allowed, it can just be like a nice bonus to send a brief optional appendix. This could include, for ambitious candidates, an extra slide with optional ideas, a short note describing alternative approaches, additional data or thoughts, just to show that there was that structure to your thinking. And this can show drive without overwhelming them. They kind of know they don't necessarily need to look through all that, but just the fact that you were ready to send it or did is cool. It's like a little bonus. I think with this, we're ready to talk about the final, how to prepare for the final or executive interview. Do you want to take this one, Miss Audrey? We're almost done. We're like so close.
We're so close. Let me share different from vibe check. How can we use different words? Culture fit is what they're looking for. I trust this person with big decisions? A final gut check on their part. And then sometimes salary or role expectations are clarified in this part. So when I say vibe check, that's what I mean. And they're often with the director level or VP or a C-suite in those smaller orgs and startups. So how to prepare, know the big picture is step 1. Executives care about business impact, judgment on things like making judgment calls, leadership maturity, long-term fit. They're like bleeding with people leaving so quickly. So they love to see that long-term fit in there. And then your ability to think strategically. They're not rechecking your resume. They're assessing whether, well, they're not only rechecking your resume, they're really assessing whether you're someone that they can trust. And they believe in their organization and they want to bring in someone good to their org. So that's what they're seeing and how you should prepare in step 1. Step 2 is prepare 60 to 90 second, basically executive summary of yourself that should include who you are, what you're great at, key business problems that you solve, why you're excited about their mission, and make sure that it's short, confident, and outcome oriented. Don't waste their time with the whole, blah, 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 blah of it all. Step 3, come up with 3 to 5 strategic stories that demonstrate your leadership under pressure, cross-functional influence, decision-making and prioritization, how you prioritize things, handling conflict with maturity, and delivering those meaningful business results. Executives are looking for that pattern recognition, not that you've done this once and now you're ready for this position. It's, oh no, this is the seasoned professional that I am. Step 4 is understanding the company's top priorities. So researching recent news, competitors, product, direction, their 10K or annual report is chef's kiss here. If they have it, just pull that 200-page document up and just do a bunch of Control F or Command F. Yeah. And then revenue model, if that's relevant here, the leadership as well as the leadership's goals. You should also go on their LinkedIn because they're probably liking stuff, or they might be liking stuff, sharing things. Great space to get some information as well. And
maybe they've been on a podcast or a media interview.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Definitely look that up. That could be a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little light stalking is okay here. Yeah. I say tongue in cheek.
Don't be too creepy though. My friend that's an executive for Red Cross, she said some people are just downright creepy. They tried to make the entire interview about spouting off facts that they knew about me. And that is not the entire point. So everything can be taken to the extreme, Audrey, is what I learn every day.
I take it back. And just make sure in the step 4, understanding their top priorities, make sure that you're connecting that to your strengths. Like connecting your strengths back to their agenda is what I mean. Make it relevant for them, why you know these things and why you're relevant. Step 5 in preparing for this executive interview is preparing to show your thinking, not just your results. I know I said earlier, like being outcome oriented, but also demonstrating how you get there. How do you approach certain situations? How would you do that? Or how would you show up in your first 90 days, which you'll know how to show up in your first 90 days from asking in your peer interview. What do people who are successful do in their first 90 days? This is a tangent that I've had people in the past record their interviews on a voice memo and then go back and listen to them so that because you can't remember everything that's going on and you don't want to be too out of the moment taking notes. Yeah. Let me keep this moving because I know we're throwing a lot of information at you, but that's a small tidbit there so that you can reference those things in your executive interview. Step 5 when preparing here is step 5 when you're preparing to show how you think and not just results, make sure you keep the answers high level still and logical, calm, focused on impact. So still leaning towards that results oriented, but not just like spitting facts at them. Step 6, demonstrating your leadership presence. So have a calm tone. Don't have the tone I have right now. I have really energetic tone right now. Calm tone, clear, concise, confident, balanced, humility and ownership. Don't ramble. Be there with clarity and poise. That's what the executives want to see. And lastly, step 7, question asking. Make sure you're asking smart, strategic questions. Avoid the really tactical ones. I kind of want to just say it's a waste of their time. Ask instead the top priorities for this role in the first 6 months. 2 to 3 priorities. How do you measure success for this function? How does this role contribute to the company's upcoming blah, blah, blah strategic goals? These show that you think like a leader.
That you think like a leader. Yeah. The tactical questions are for lower level people that you've already spoken with. So it's not like those can go unanswered, just not by the executive. After this, we congratulate you. You might be done with the interview process, but many orgs will take a few final steps behind the scenes to do reference checks, like I mentioned. And also, if you're extended an offer, you might just be handed it might be handled via email, like the good news that you got it, but you might also receive a call. And so be prepared. That's not necessarily an interview, but they are going to be double checking the comp that you're going to be okay with, because they don't want to draft all that up if you're just going to spike it down. Although plenty of companies will just send it out and then you can start the negotiation from there. There's a couple different ways it could go down. And then they just might want to work out the details before HR drafts everything up, not only including salary, like I mentioned, but bonuses and commission, equity, if that's applicable, benefits, PTO, start date. A lot of those might not be negotiable, so they might not talk with you about it, but they also might be. So even though the interviews are over, you might have a few more conversations and a few more emails until everything's wrapped up with a bow. But in closing, I want to say, I hope that you believe in interviews as an opportunity to grow as a professional and see not just like you get better, but also see how good you actually are by forcing yourself to articulate it. I think that interviews are not a waste of time, even if you don't end up getting the job. I think that they're an amazing time to be reflective, sharpen your skills, and remember your impact on a regular basis rather than just clocking in and clocking out of work. And so I hope that this interview series has helped you learn how to think about your success and communicate that in a way that will be winsome to your perfect fit company in the future. In closing, thank you so much for joining us. Let us know if there's anything else that you'd like to hear us discuss in future episodes. Otherwise, if you feel like you need one-on-one interview prep, we do that all the time, as well as any other support, like clarifying what role you should really go for, and then all the details of what it takes to actually land that role. That's what we do all the time. Audrey and I are seasoned career coaches. You could look at our work and our testimonials, not only on this podcast, but over at thecalledcareer.com, where you could schedule a free consultation call and we could see if it's a good fit for us to support you in depth. All right. Best of luck. We're honored that you're here and we believe in you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research, identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want, rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.